I have spent many, many hours doing broadcast work with him in the past. MLB Pipeline's Jonathan Mayo joining us. Sure, some would say too many, especially when we are doing like every pick of the draft at some point after we get through round one and some of the comp picks. And Jonathan's got a new book out that we would like to highlight too. Give him a follow on Twitter. We posted everything on our Twitter just now, but it's called Smart, Wrong, and Lucky. Jonathan, great to have you on. Before we get to the prospect combo, and thanks for sticking with us. We were having fun with Kyle Gibson. Give us the lead on the book, because the guy... What? Oh, don't show that one.
No, I'm going to show it because I want to know.
That's the competition.
No, we have a book war.
There is more than enough room for me and Kratz on the bookshelf.
We're having a book war here between Kratz and Jonathan Mayo.
There's no war. There's no war. It's all love among all of us.
Tell us about
we won't mention that Kratz kicking my ass on Amazon baseball book rankings, but you know.
It's all right. You kicked my ass on all the prospect articles when I was playing. So.
I don't remember mentioning you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. So I spend a lot of my time, Scott, as you know, talking to scouts on a regular basis, and they're great storytellers, and they have phenomenal stories. They love telling stories about guys that they missed on, but they also will tell stories. Sometimes their colleagues' stories about the guys that they got in the late rounds who then went on to become much better than even they anticipated. And that's what this book is. It's all guys who, have gone on. Some are still playing, went on to become superstars, all-stars, MVPs, future Hall of Famers, but started out much more humbly as later round picks. And somewhere, some scout or collection of scouts saw something in them to give them that first opportunity that they then, of course, ran with.
Which one's your favorite story? Whose story is your favorite story? Whether it ended well or not.
It's like asking me who my favorite kid is, but
you always have a favorite.
I do, but I can't say that publicly. My daughter might be listening. I think there's some great stories in here. The one that probably stands out the most as being sort of the craziest is probably Lorenzo Cain, mostly because he had never played an inning of baseball before his sophomore year of high school. It sounds like a Disney movie, but he got cut from his basketball team, which I don't totally understand. It wasn't a large school, and anyone who watched Lorenzo Cain scale fences, he had to have some sort of role on a basketball team. But it was baseball's game because he needed something to do. So he went and played baseball. They had 8 guys on their JV team. He made it 9 so they could play JV. His first practice, he went out to shag flies and put the glove on the wrong hand because he had never played before. And like a lot of kids, the first time they ever play, you think, oh, it's my dominant hand. So once he figured that out, it was okay. Got drafted 2 years later as a draft and a follow by the Brewers. So they sent him off to junior college. Struggled so badly in junior college, they almost benched him. But by the end of the year, he was the best player in the conference. And the Brewers were able to sign him for about $95,000. And then he went up and won MVP honors in the rookie level Arizona League and was off and running from there. But went from never having been on a baseball field to, becoming a top prospect. And then obviously going on and winning a World Series with Kansas City, some Gold Glove awards, just finished up a really, really good career. So that's probably the story that stands out as maybe the craziest one from how he started to how he finished.
Oh, you forgot one accolade for Lorenzo Cain there, Jonathan. Foul territory host also. So next time when you write your book, you might have to put an edit in there, redact it, and say, hey, foul territory.
I'm going to go buy all the copies and write it in now.
There you go. Perfect. Hey, can we get a copy? Because I got a Kratz. We got Jeff. Dude, I don't buy stuff. Jeff Fletcher. I mean, look at all these.
No, we got
Evan Drellick's book. Now I need a Jonathan Mayo.
I bought that. I bought both of these for the record. Yes, I bought both of these with.
But you didn't buy my book.
Money.
No,
I have it coming. It'll be on the desk.
So, Jonathan, I want you to inscribe one to Kratz and say you never made any list, Kratz. Your story sucks. I love you, Jonathan Mayo.
I can do that. I can do that. I have here. I have my copy. I have a copy right here. I'll send it your way.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I love baseball books. I love
Don't send it to us.
books.
We're getting one on Amazon. It'll be here in 2 days.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine. We'll pay. Scott will happily pay for it. I still want my free one. Let's get into prospects, Jonathan, because that's kind of more of what you're known for. Do I need to change my kid's name to Jackson to make a prospect
yes.
list or what?
Yes. The short answer is yes.
Because 1 and 2 are Jackson, and then 9 is Jackson Merrill from San Diego. So if you want to be in the top 10, you need to be named Jackson.
Why is that such a hot name?
I don't know. If we had 2 more, then we'd have the Jackson 5, and it's unfortunate we couldn't do that. But I am a dad, so I come full with dad jokes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's such a popular name, to be honest with you. But the 2 at the very top, Holiday and Chourio. I mean, Jackson Merrill is a very talented player too. All 3 of them obviously are in our top 10, but what Holiday and Chourio have done at such a young age, at such advanced levels. I mean, we saw, Jackson Holiday just got drafted a year ago as a teenager and is raking in Double-A. I think you could probably keep pushing them up if you needed to, but they don't need to, so they can pump the brakes a little bit. But we're talking about a kid who might be banging down the big league door at age 20 next year. So there are expectations with the number 1 overall pick, but he has far exceeded them, which is hard to do. And he's one of the best, I think, prospects. We just did a story. We kind of refresh it every time there's a new number 1 prospect, ranking the all-time number 1 prospects, and we put him in at number 5. So, and that has a lot to do with hype and how they perform when they become number 1. But for a guy to have the hype as a number 1 pick and then to be better than that, you don't see that too often.
Wait, who are ahead of him? Harper, Trout?
You're going to make me have to look up the story. I don't have it committed to memory.
Mark Pryor?
Strasburg may have graduated before we got him to number 1 because he was drafted and then he was in the big leagues. So, I mean, we had Buxton up there. I don't know if he made the top 5 just because he was the number 1 prospect for a really long time. So it has one of the hardest things to do when you do that is not to have hindsight in terms of like, well, what's happened to him in the big leagues? It's more like what are you thinking about him at the time that you ranked him number 1? So like Joe Mauer's gone on, went on to have this unbelievable career, and he was our very first number 1 prospect, but there wasn't as much hype. I mean, there wasn't as much hype around prospects back in 2004, but it wasn't the same kind of hype that there was around someone like even a guy like Buxton or Gunnar Henderson a year ago, or Jackson Holiday now.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. You got me traded by putting him number 1. Appreciate it.
Got him traded.
Got me traded. Because they ranked him number 1 prospect, and the Twins were like, yeah, we got the number 1 prospect catcher. See you. Beat it.
Yeah, sure. It was my ranking.
Thanks, Jonathan.
It was my ranking that did that.
He's got that kind of power. Okay, so with the power that you have, who are you calling up first? Jackson Holiday to Baltimore or Jackson Chourio to the Brewers? Chourio, I just looked up, so he's about 100 days younger than Holiday is. It's crazy to have these 2 doing so well at a high level. I know Holiday really hasn't had like any slumping. Jackson Chourio has, but he's also on a contending team, and the Brewers prospects. I mean, do you remember what, like 2-3 years ago, they were towards the bottom of the team rankings, and look at them now too.
Yeah, they've got a really good farm system now with guys who are really performing well. Some of that might just depend on opportunity, where there's room. They have young teams and stacked at their position. So some of them may just be where there is a need. If I were to guess, I'm going to guess that Jackson Holiday beats Jackson Chourio to the big leagues, but it may not be by much. And if I don't sound confident in that, it's because I'm not really sure. I really just think it's going to depend on where the opportunity is, because you don't bring one of those guys up and not have him play every single day. So it's going to just be a question of how they carve out an opening so they can be in that lineup each and every day.
Can Jackson Chourio play though right now? Like if he was called up right now and they were just like, screw it, because hey, the Brewers, it's more of an obvious concern for them. Like Baltimore needs starting pitching. The Brewers need more offense, which has been the case for a while. Like I've seen some articles like, hey, should the Orioles call up Jackson Holiday this year for their playoff push? I'm like, what about Jackson Chourio for a team that needs more offense than Baltimore does?
I think that Jackson Chourio might struggle more out of the gate. So if you're looking for someone right now, I would probably, in this hypothetical that I don't think will happen in either scenario, I think Jackson Holiday would hold his own more. He's got a more advanced approach at the plate. I think Jackson Chourio might be exposed a little bit. Eventually he would make adjustments, which is what he's done, with his very rapid ascent to the upper levels of the minors. But I think right out of the gate, there's a little more swing and miss. He's gotten better this year than a year ago. But you look at Jackson Holliday, and he doesn't strike out a lot. He draws walks. He works counts, but he doesn't miss pitches that he's supposed to. His swing decisions are unbelievable. So I think he'd be more likely to, if not hit the ground running, then hold his own. I think both of them could help out in other ways. Both run well, both defend well. So there could be contributions there, but it might be a little bit of a tall task to ask Jackson Chourio, like out of the gate, hey, we want to put you in a lineup and have you produce every day while we're going into the playoffs. That might be a little too tall of an order.
All right, we just got done with the trade deadline 2 weeks ago. Who in your top 10 would you legitimately have traded straight up for Shohei Ohtani?
None of them.
Not one of them. How far down the list do you have to go? And in this situation,
because he's a 2-month rental, right?
Yes.
So and that's the only reason. Now, I think that you'd have to go. There isn't like a magic number on the top 100 that would go. I think it would depend on the situation and the talent. I think there are scenarios. The Orioles have a really stacked farm system with 6 top 100 guys. Would I have traded 1 or maybe even 2 top 100 guys to get Shohei Ohtani for 2 months? I probably would have done that, especially because they have some depth, at certain positions up the middle and in the outfield. You could trade some of those guys and not even feel the hurt. There's some farm systems you trade away 1 or 2 of those guys and that's it, right? And you got nothing left. But I think that there were scenarios where you could have done that had the Angels been interested in listening. But I don't think there's anybody in the top 10 of the teams competing that I would have said, yes, I would trade that guy to help me make it a little bit further. I'm looking, there aren't that many teams, the Orioles, maybe the Padres could have made a trade, but I wouldn't trade Ethan Salas or Jackson Merrill for Shohei Ohtani right now.
Mayo, Jonathan, I'll make a case here, like Evan Carter, without even thinking too much about what his potential is. I think just more situational, in my opinion, on Kratz's question. Like Texas has had this all-in attitude the entire season. They could get Shohei Ohtani for a team that's never won a World Series. I think you say, hey, screw it. If it's going to cost us 1 prospect, even though he's a top 10 guy, I don't know if I think they actually would be more likely to do it than most, because I think this has just as much to do with the GM. Like Chris Young is not looking at prospects the way that some teams hug, squeeze so tight every guy that's ranked really high up and say, no matter what, we are more about our future and having a guy that we can control his cost and has the potential to be really good than actually looking straight ahead and being like, wait, this might be the year we win a World Series for the first time in our franchise history. I think Texas has done it right.
I think that's a fair point. And yeah, they are. I mean, listen, AJ Preller in San Diego has kind of gone back and forth in terms of love and hate. Jerry DiPoto, in Seattle. So guys have done it when they see that window. And I could see the Rangers having been in that situation. And maybe they would have, they managed to get Max Scherzer, and traded a top 100 guy away, but it wasn't Evan Carter. And then they have Scherzer for longer. So in the end, that may have been a better fit. We don't know how far down the road they may have gone. Would the Angels have even traded Shohei Ohtani to a team within their division? I don't know the answers to that. And I think it may have also been different if it were a team that perceived itself to have a chance at signing Shohei Ohtani beyond this year. Because then you have 2 months to sort of say, see, it's pretty cool over here. We win a lot. The Dodgers might have been willing to shed some of their top prospects more so than some of these other teams where, Shohei Ohtani's not going to sign with the Baltimore Orioles long term. That's just not going to happen. And the Orioles and Mike Elias likely know that. But he could sign with the Dodgers. And if the Dodgers could have gotten 2 months of Shohei Ohtani to say, you can stay sort of in town. We win a lot here. It's pretty cool. Come join us. That would have given him a little more runway to the offseason and signing that long-term deal. And then maybe that's worth a little bit more.
Yep, that's fair. Okay, so I want to ask you about the team rankings, because I know you just came out with the fresh top 100, but on the team side, which I love to look at, to just get a gauge of where ball clubs are at in terms of how they're developing talent. And also it helps you to project forward when you're thinking about which teams are going to be good. Because we know, I mean, those guys get called up throughout a season, and I don't think that always gets weighed in for some prognosticators. So on the other end of the spectrum, who are some of the lowest ranked farm systems? And we're touching on the Angels. There was a lot of controversy, or at least debate, about if they should have traded Ohtani or not. And some people did argue that they didn't have much in their farm system anyway, so screw it. I still differ there, where I'm like, you're still probably setting yourself back another year or two when you do get rid of like 5-6 guys, even if they're not ranked as high in other spots. So what do you think about some of the bottom teams on that list?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to continually win and have a strong farm system at the same time. Some teams do it. The Dodgers, because they have the large pocketbooks, can do it. The Rays have managed to do it year after year. I think the Brewers are kind of on that cusp right now, but they, as you've pointed out, this is newer that their farm system is that strong. So you look at the bottom of the list, and you have the Astros and the Braves. And those are teams that have won a lot. The Braves built up their farm system. They were our number one farm system a while ago, and they've parlayed that into winning. Now, what some of these teams have been able to do, even though their farm systems aren't strong, is use what they do have. The Astros, I think, were 27th on our preseason list. They still managed to make a trade for Justin Verlander. They traded what they had at the top, in Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford. And Drew Gilbert was their one top 100 guy to make the trade that they needed. The Braves keep making, maybe they're more incremental changes in terms of, deadline trades, but they're willing to do it. And that's why it's, taking them longer to kind of to rebuild. The Angels, they've been at the bottom, but they also get guys to the big leagues really, really quickly. Over the last few years, Zach Nato last year was their first round pick, and he's been in the big leagues. Nolan Shanuel, who's their first round pick this year, is already in Double-A and raking. So just because they don't have a super deep farm system doesn't mean that they don't get guys to the big leagues. But those systems on the bottom have struggled a little bit to either replenish or rebuild the coffers, so to speak.
Get around.
I love it.
All right,
I want teams that
let's try them out in the show.
We've talked about it, though. I love teams that go for it. I love teams that advance their guys, and I want them to do well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, for teams like the Angels, it hasn't worked out.
Yeah,
right. I think it comes with risk. I'm all for getting guys. Zach Nato was ready for the big leagues, like the way he swung the bat, his contact, all those things. They knew he could do a lot of things. Victor Medeiros got rushed to the big leagues this year. He was not ready for the big leagues. Major league stuff, yes. Command, no. So I think some of the time with the Angels, it's worked. Chase Silseth made a nice contribution last year. He made up really, really quickly. He's been up again this year. I think he'll be just fine. You have to worry, though. I think there's a difference between aggressively pushing and rushing guys to the big leagues. And sometimes if you rush somebody from a developmental standpoint, it can set them back. You have to kind of understand what the player's makeup is, that if they get up and fail, because plenty of guys have failed, they use it all the time. Mike Trout was not good his first time up in the big leagues, went back to the minors the next year, came back up, and was the Mike Trout we've seen over the last decade. But you need to know something about the player in your system, whether or not he can handle that kind of adversity on that stage before you run them up to the big leagues.
Yeah, it's a great combo because obviously they're kind of pushing their chips in. And also Perry Manation's coming from the Braves, and the Braves do that a lot. And yeah, sometimes they call a guy up, then he goes back down for a while. Like Vaughn Grissom's been down most of the year. Now he's back up. So great stuff. Hey, Jonathan, great to have you on here for the first time. Thank you. Good to catch up with you for 20 minutes instead of 10 hours doing a draft day
two
show.
Of the draft, man. It's a slog.
Exactly. Yes. Congrats on the book. We'll have it on the desk in the next 2 days. Boom, there it is. Smart, Wrong, and Lucky, the origin stories of baseball's unexpected stars by Jonathan, and with a forward by Dave Dombrowski. Great to have you on. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.